Summer is by far my favorite season. So as soon as summer started, it would make sense that I got COVID. And this wasn't just like, oh no, I have COVID. I was legit sick. So for the first couple of weeks of summer, I spent in quarantine, watching a bunch of movies until I stumbled upon I Know What You Did Last Summer. And you know what? I didn't even know this was a trilogy. I knew it had a sequel, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. But I was never impressed enough with the original to watch it. And I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer didn't come out until like almost 10 years later. Not to mention it went straight to video. So like most people, I didn't know this existed. Anyway, I found all three on HBO Max. And I had nothing better to do, so here we are. Let me just start by saying this trilogy is a lot better than I thought it would be. That's not to say these movies are great, because they're not. But there was a lot about them that I actually liked. And I'm happy to say that they at least kept me entertained during my quarantine. So let's start things off with the original. I Know What You Did Last Summer starts with a group of friends. They're out drunk driving one night and they end up running someone over.
I couldn't see it. Look, I swear.
Is he dead?
I don't know.
I know, such a likable group of teens. Anyway, the four of them agree that the best way to handle the situation is to just dump the body into the ocean and then never talk about what they did with anyone.
And never, ever, under any circumstances known to God, speak about this again. Is that clear?
And you know what? This plan actually works. For a while. I mean, they never get questioned by the police. None of their friends ever wonder why their car's all messed up and bloody. They just go about their lives. That is, until the following year when they start getting letters from someone who claims to know what they did. This mysterious person dresses up in a fisherman outfit and kills them off with a giant hook. And this premise, as a horror movie, this is something that I can really get behind. You know, the traditional horror slasher kills off teenagers having sex or doing drugs, but what I like about this one is everyone who's killed off are killed off because of something they did in their past. And I think this is a great twist on that traditional horror slasher recipe. So for that, I think this movie is really good. Unfortunately, this movie is also really bad. At its core, this is basically a ripoff of Scream, and Scream was famous as a whodunit. You know, it centered on a group of friends and they were all trying to figure out who the killer was. The movie, to its credit, really played with the idea that it could be anyone. Well, I Know What You Did Last Summer tried to do the same thing. They played it off like it could be somebody in the group, or maybe it was somebody who saw what they did, but at no point did I ever think that it wasn't the guy that they hit. When they dumped him in the ocean, he was clearly still alive. So from the very beginning, it was obvious to me that he was going to be coming back for revenge. So the fact that they tried to play it off like it would be somebody else was just stupid. Now, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer was much better as a whodunit. In this one, Julie, one of the survivors from the original, she wins a trip to the Bahamas in a radio contest. But when she and her friends get there, it turns out it's not even tourist season. Everything's closed down, the hotel is empty, and to make things worse, there's a giant storm on the way. I know, it's so cliche. Stuck in an empty hotel on a deserted island during a storm. But I enjoyed it. It's actually a fun departure from what a lot of slasher movies were doing at the time, which was basically copying Scream and having them set in the suburbs. Now, the fisherman in the previous movie never had an on-screen death. He was thrown overboard from a boat and you never saw what happened, so it was obvious that he was coming back. But even still, like I said, this was a much better whodunit because here he actually has an accomplice. Now, full disclosure, it's not that difficult to figure out who the accomplice is, nor is it difficult to figure out their relationship to the fisherman. But so what? For a sequel to a Scream knockoff, the twist wasn't half bad. Honestly, it was at least fun to be able to guess who the killer might be. Because in the first one, it never felt like it could be anyone else. Now, even though I figured out who the killer was pretty quickly, it was still fun because the movie really did try to keep you guessing. You know, there were a few red herrings, like the caretaker of the hotel, who was also into voodoo. He had some pretty creepy scenes and they were pretty fun.
The pain of the past, fear of the future, the blood of the young.
My biggest complaint about the movie was how Julie and her friends won tickets to the Bahamas in the first place. It turns out that the fishermen faked the whole radio contest just to get them alone on the island. What kind of over-the-top ploy is this? In the first movie, the fisherman was willing to chase people all over town and kill them pretty much anywhere. But now he suddenly wants his victims on a secluded island? Look, I'm fine with having a sequel that takes place on the island. Just don't make the reason they're there be because of the killer. Isn't that funny how suspension of disbelief works? I'm okay with a weirdo voodoo side character. I'm even okay with some crazed fisherman taking revenge on a group of teenagers over the course of 2 years rather than just go to the police. But the moment he orchestrates like a phony competition to send his victims to an island, that's too much. Anyway, on to the final movie. I'll always know what you did last summer. This one is the absolute worst as far as production value. It went straight to video, the budget was tiny, and it's very much made for TV. The acting, the lighting, the sets, everything about this is just so cheap. They even have these like weird transitions that go from one shot to the next, and it's just so amateur. But I was already 2 movies in, and I wasn't going to let something like that stop me from finishing the franchise. So this one doesn't bring back any of the previous cast. Even the fisherman at the end of part 2 was clearly killed. So I was really curious to find out how they were going to bring things together for another sequel, and I gotta tell you, the way they pulled it off, I was at least half impressed. So it turns out that the fisherman and his killing sprees have gone on to become like a sort of urban legend in this town. All the kids try and scare each other with stories about the evil fisherman who will haunt you for all of your dirty little secrets. Well, one night at a carnival, this group of teens pulls off this prank where one of them dresses up as a fisherman and the rest pretend to be attacked. Well, during this ingenious plan, someone ends up actually getting killed. There's an investigation, but the cops can't figure anything out. So they all agree that the best way to handle the situation is to go along with the idea that some copycat fisherman is on the loose.
The secret dies with us. Say it.
Secret dies with us.
Secret dies with us.
Secret dies with us.
And their plan actually works for a while until a real copycat fisherman starts taking revenge on them the next year. And I don't know how much of this has to do with COVID, but up to this point, I was actually impressed. I really liked how this movie brought everything about the franchise together, even with a whole new cast. You got a new group of teens with a new secret, and what seems like a sort of copycat killer taking revenge for what they did. It even felt like another good whodunit. You know, the movie kind of played with the idea that it might be somebody else at the carnival who found out what they did. It even teased the idea that it could be one of the cops from the investigation who knew what happened but couldn't prove it. Either way, I was really interested to see where it would go. Unfortunately, it went supernatural. So the fisherman was brought back from the dead, like some sort of Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees. What? Nothing about this entire franchise has been even remotely supernatural. But here we are at the ending of the 3rd movie in a franchise, and suddenly, bam! The fisherman turned into some supernatural urban legend. It was such a lame ending that came out of nowhere, and it really messed up the entire franchise. Not to suggest that this is a great franchise to begin with, but it was okay. Right? You know, it's hard to tell how much of this franchise I enjoyed because it was good, versus how much did I enjoy because I was sick and stuck at home with nothing to do. Either way, I at least appreciate these movies for getting me through quarantine. So if you're stuck at home with nothing else to do, this is at least a halfway decent way to spend your time. Well, for those of you who stuck around to the end, I'll go ahead and give you a little personal update. After what seemed like one of the longest years in my life, I finally finished up the teaching program, and I officially have a credential. I also got a job teaching at the same high school that I went to, which is amazing. I actually went back to the campus a few weeks ago to just look around, and I was surprised at how many memories just came flooding back. It was such a surreal experience. I'm just so thrilled to be able to go back and teach somewhere that means so much to me. I can't wait to start up in August. I also can't wait to start up so I can finally start getting paid. As some of you already know, in order to get through the credential program, I had to quit my job and pretty much work for free for an entire year. Scholarships definitely helped, but The bottom line is this year has been a struggle financially. With that said, if you like my content and you'd like to support me, you can use the link in the description below to buy me a coffee. I'm not used to asking for this type of help, but every little bit goes a long way. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, let's not just watch movies, let's talk about them too. Yeah, starting this summer off with COVID, this is only going to get better.
Too bad about Kenny, huh? Life in a big city.